Hey everyone, it's Megan here from Megan Makes Do, and today I'm going to show you how to change color in corner to corner crochet. So before we get started with the actual tutorial, I want to go over a couple helpful tricks for using multiple colors in corner to corner crochet. So what you'll want to do is divide up your yarn by color, and some helpful tools for that can be to use some clamps such as this. I use these a lot. And what you're going to do, it's nice because they open up and so you can clip them onto your blanket as you go, but you just take the end of your yarn and what you're going to do is wrap it around your bobbin or your clamp to create a bobbin. So just simply wrap it around as much as possible. I like to make mine rather large because corner to corner does use quite a bit of yarn and I want to try to reduce the amount of ends I have to weave in. So just keep weaving it around, wrapping it around all over until you have a large amount. Then you can just cut off the end and you're ready to work with this bobbin. The nice part about using bobbins is, like I said, say you have like an edge of a blanket, like right here, as you're working, just clip it onto the edge where you stopped when you move on to the next color, and then when you turn your row, it's there for you the next time that you need it as well. So you can find these bobbins at a local hardware store. A second tool that you can use, it's a little more expensive, but they do have bobbins and bobbin holders. So I have a wooden one. I got it off of a shop on Etsy. I will link to one that's similar. I'm not sure if she still sells these, but you just take the bobbin out and again wrap your yarn all the way around this little bobbin tube. And I like to put quite a bit on these as well. I try to wrap as much yarn as I can. It kind of looks like a big bulb when I'm done, but just so you know, you can wrap way more than what I've wrapped just now. But what you do is you wrap up all your color, and you can do multiple colors on each bobbin. So this holder I have, I think holds up to 10 bobbins. So I alternate them, going back between the gray and white, which is typically I use only 2 colors in corner to corner crochet, but you can use lots of different colors. So try to get it as big as you can, wrap it around until it's rather large, as long as you have enough room. And then you just open up the top here and slip it in. And when you close it, it holds the bobbins in place, and then you can easily crochet and it just nicely glides off the bobbin as you work. So this is a great tool to have when you're doing corner to corner crochet. I highly recommend getting one. And the nice thing is they do clamp closed right here. So there's this little clasp. There's one on both ends. So that way, when you have to turn your work, you can simply close these up and then turn the whole thing over. And that will kind of help unwind your yarn a little bit as you go. So I highly recommend making bobbins with a clamp or using a bobbin holder such as the one that I've shown here before you start doing any color change for corner to corner. And just know you can always add more bobbins and add more color to your bobbins as you go. Okay, so when we change color in crochet, we need to add a new piece of yarn. So for this first set of the video, I'm going to show you how to change so that your next square will be the new color. So here I've got my white yarn and I need my next square to be white. So I'm going to stop working this gray square when I get to the last yarn over of the 3rd double crochet of that square. So I've worked a chain 3 and I've almost finished the 3rd double crochet. I'm going to change to white in that last yarn over. And then I'm going to go ahead and slip stitch with the white into the next chain 3 space. Okay, so now I have the working yarn as the white yarn, and I can just tug a little bit on the gray yarn to secure it. And now I can work my next square as white. So let me show you one more time. A basic change of color in corner to corner. Stop at the last yarn over of the 3rd double crochet of the square you're on, and then finish that double crochet with the new color of yarn, and then slip stitch into the next chain 3 with the new color. And then make sure you tighten up that first color just to make sure it's secure. So now I have the white yarn is my working yarn, and I can go ahead and work my next square by chaining 3 and then working 3 double crochet into the chain 3 space. and then I'm going to go ahead and slip stitch into the next chain 3 space, and I can continue to work, and I'm just going to leave that gray yarn hanging there because when I work my next row I might need it again. And I'm going to show you how to work some carries as well in this video. So go ahead and just make sure that you leave your yarn hanging until you know for sure that you're not going to need it and you can cut it off. This will reduce you having so many ends to weave in when you're done with your corner to corner piece. So now I can continue working with the white until I have to switch to gray again. Okay, so now I want to show you how to carry your yarn. So there's a lot of different ways to do this. So I'm going to pull out this white square so I can show you how to carry your gray yarn. So let's say that your pattern calls for you to have 2 squares of white and then gray again. Instead of dropping our yarn or cutting our yarn, we can carry that gray yarn through those white squares and then pick it back up again to work the rest of the row. Okay, so the number one rule about carrying your yarn is whatever color yarn you're going to carry, it needs to be touching that same color square. So you can have white on top if you're carrying the gray on the bottom, but for example right here, let's say I wanted this gray, I wouldn't carry it through these white squares because those white squares have both another white on the top and the bottom. So you want to make sure wherever you carry that those same color squares of the yarn you're carrying are either on top of it or on bottom of it, and it'll make more sense as I show you how we carry. So let me go ahead and grab our new color. So we're going to grab our white yarn, and again, like every color change in corner to corner, we are going to switch color on that last yarn over of the last double crochet, and then I'm going to actually pull my gray yarn. I'm not going to let it go this time. I'm going to carry it. So I'm going to bring it in front and kind of lay it across those chain 3s. Then I'm going to go under the carried yarn into the chain 3 space of the next square, and then I'm going to work my slip stitch. So here again, go under your carried yarn into the chain 3 space and then slip stitch with white. So now my gray yarn is secure, it's in there, and I can lay it across those chain 3s and carry it with me as I go. But see how it's touching a gray square? That's how I know it's okay to carry. So then I'm just going to work the 3 double crochet of this square, making sure that I'm going into the chain 3 space and that the carried gray yarn is on top. So I'm going around the chain 3 and the carried yarn. So now, if I wanted to work the next square in gray, I would just drop the white and switch to gray. But I'm going to work one more square in white. So I'm going to carry the yarn again, lay it across, so I'm slip stitching under the carried yarn and into the chain 3 space. And then again, I'm going to work my square, going around the chain 3 and the carried gray yarn. So just remember, as long as the carried yarn is touching the same color square as you carry it, you're good to go. If it's not going to touch the same color, don't carry. So now I can drop the white. Again, I'm working that last yarn over, and then pick the gray right back up because I've carried it through, and I can switch to gray right here and then continue working in gray for however many more stitches I need. And now my white yarn is in the back. I'm just going to drop that until I need it again. And we've carried that gray yarn, kind of zigzagging it through the stitches as we go. Okay, so sometimes when you're working corner to corner and you want to change colors, you'll notice that you maybe need to color one square before the strand of yarn is. So in this case, I need my next square to be white. So I can actually carry that white yarn forward a little bit so I can use it in that first stitch. So I haven't quite gotten there. I can go ahead and change colors. So at one stitch before, and see how I have a little bit of a carried yarn right there. I'm going to work around that carried yarn. So again, when you slip stitch, make sure you're going under the carried yarn and the chain 3 space, and then I've switched to white one square before my yarn was. And then we can go ahead and work our white square, making sure to go across the carried white yarn and the gray chain 3. And remember, this works because I'm using that white yarn and I'm carrying the white yarn. So the white carried yarn is touching a white square, so you won't see it when you crochet. So here was where my yarn was, and we carried it almost like forward into our crochet before changing color. Okay, so I'm going to show you that to you one more time. So here I've worked my 3 squares of white, and now I need gray again, but again it's 1 square away from where I need it to be. So again, I'm just going to carry it across, change color, make sure that when I slip stitch into the chain 3, I'm going under the carried yarn, and I've switched to gray again. And again, we're going to be working around that gray carried yarn, and since we're working with the gray, it's touching a gray square, so you won't see the carry when you do it. So now I can just continue using this gray yarn for as long as I need. And here you can see that we have changed color twice. So I changed from gray to white here, and from white to gray here, and I've carried both colors. Okay, so other times when you want to carry your yarn, and this I kind of call carrying back. So in this instance, I need my white square to be next, but this white strand that I have that I've left attached is about 2 squares away. So you can carry your yarn across multiple squares. You just have to keep in mind that you've got to be able to keep it slack enough that you're not going to see puckering. That's what you want to avoid. So I would probably only carry yarn for the max would be like 4 squares, just because otherwise you might get some puckers in your work. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and switch to the white. So I'm going to pull it across and try to keep it a little bit loose so that you have enough of your yarn carried to kind of do that little zigzag, that little step onto those squares. So using my white yarn, I'm going to go ahead and slip stitch, making sure I'm under the carried yarn. So slip stitch with white to the next square. And then I'm going to go ahead and work my next corner to corner square, chain 3 and 3 double crochet, again making sure to work around the chain 3 as well as the carried yarn. So now when I need to slip stitch to the next square, again I've got to make sure that carried yarn is underneath my hook. So I'm catching it so I can work around it so it's not seen when my blanket is finished. So here I can go ahead and work my next square, working around that chain 3 and around the carried yarn. Okay, so you can see that I've carried the white and used it on top of the carried yarn, and it's kind of just zigzagging across. The carried yarn is going across. So again, like I said, you can carry your yarn back like that and it will kind of zigzag across. But again, I wouldn't do more than 4 squares across, just because if you do that and it's not slack enough, you are going to start to get some puckering in your work and it'll be pulling really tight, and we don't want that. So just make sure that when you're carrying, that the carried yarn is touching the same color square, either the one below it or the one that you're working with, so you don't see that through. And you might have to kind of spread out some of your double crochets as you go across the carries, just to make sure that you fully cover that yarn up. Okay, so now I want to show you that sometimes, we need to carry our yarn forward instead of back. So for this instance, I need my next square to be gray, but the one after that to be white. And here's my white yarn. And I don't want to cut it off. I can simply carry it forward by just slipping it under my hook as I slip stitch into the next chain 3 space. So remember to always put your hook underneath the carried yarn. So I'm carrying this white yarn, and since it's touching a white square, it's a-okay. I'm going to slip stitch with my gray, and then I'm going to be working around my white carried yarn and the chain 3. So I'm going to chain 3 here, and then work my double crochets into the chain 3 space, making sure again to catch that carried yarn under my hook. And this way, when I get to my next square, I'll already have my white yarn there to change, and I don't have to cut off another piece. So here we're on our last double crochet. Here's my white carried yarn. I'm going to go ahead and finish off that double crochet with white and then work my next stitch with the white yarn. So here you can see I've carried that white yarn, I've zigzagged it up and carried it forward so that I can use it for my next square. Okay, so the last color change I want to show you for corner to corner is just a simple color change when it's side to side. So when you're carrying your yarn and leaving those bobbins attached, this is probably the easiest way that we're going to change color. So I'm going to show you real quick just how they look when you change side by side. So here I'm working a gray square. And again, when I get to that last double crochet, I'm going to stop before the last yarn over and leave those 2 loops on my hook, and then I'm going to grab my next yarn, which is right here. I need my next square to be white, and my white is right here. I love when that happens. So I'm going to go ahead and grab my white yarn, and I'm going to finish that double crochet with the white, and then I'm going to kind of just pull on that gray yarn after I slip stitch. So let me slip stitch to the chain 3 with the white, tighten up my gray yarn, a nice easy color change, and then I can work my next square with my white yarn. Again, we're in chain 3 and work 3 double crochet for our corner to corner squares. And when I get to the end of this one, I'm going to stop before the last yarn over, and now I need to pick up my gray yarn again, and luckily it's right there. So there will be like a tiny little carry across when they're even side by side, but you won't see it because the carried yarn will touch the same color. So I'm going to grab my gray yarn, switch to gray in that last double crochet, then I'm going to slip stitch into the chain 3 space of the next square, and then tighten up my white yarn in the back, and you'll see this little carry right here, but you won't notice it once you are finished with your blanket. And as you can see, my carried yarns are here in the back, and this is a great way to reduce having so many ends to weave in. I always tend to carry my yarn and I use bobbins, and you'll still have quite a few ends to weave in with corner to corner when you're changing color, but won't be near as much as you would if you were to cut after every single color change. So now I could continue using my gray yarn for as long as I need until I have to switch colors again. I hope that you enjoyed this tutorial on how to change and carry colors using corner to corner crochet.